Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for a new episode of A New Go of New Home Sales. I'm your host, Anya Chrysanthon, and joining me today is Aaron Fichera, who is a CEO of Smart Touch Interactive. So welcome to the show, Aaron.
Oh, great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me. I'm excited for our conversation today. So before we get started, I would love for people to learn a little bit about who you are, your background. I'm always fascinated to learn how do people end up in home building. So tell us about how you got here and what is it that you guys do at Smart Touch Interactive?
Of course, a native Texan, so love the state. Growing up here, when I first got involved with the housing market, it was through my father, who was a developer. We made barn dominium, house barn combination, acreage developments out in West Texas, which were wildly successful. And then from there, 2008 happened, and I went into more of the college route where I focused on social and economic history. So outside of college, I became a school teacher and college professor for social and economic history. And I always had a fascination with business and marketing, housing, just American economics in general. And then over the time, I got hooked up with the wonderful people here at Smart Touch, and I have the honor to be the COO. So I was able to apply my prior knowledge in construction, commercial real estate, and so forth with finance, and I love to develop people and just business in general.
Love it. So tell us a little bit about what is it that you guys do at Smart Touch Interactive? What are some of the services that you specialize in?
Of course. We are one of the only marketing and creative agencies that cater to master plan and home builder marketing, as well as we have our own proprietary CRM system catered to this niche market. So if you can think about Smart Touch, we have what's coined by our founder and CEO, Robert Coes, all lines in. Everything within the tackle box. We have our digital department that does SEM, SEO, social. We have our agency side and a creative side with wonderful designers that do from branding to traditional, non-traditional ads and so forth that then support our digital marketing agency, as well as our own software division, which again oversees our CRM as well as website.
Very cool. So what's the name of the CRM?
NextGen. Actually, we were just about to release the new UI. We've had it catering to the market for going on 14 years now. So we're really excited for the release coming up next month of the new UI. And really, it's a pleasure seeing it blow up over the last few years.
That's great news. Aaron, I love to hear about what builders are dealing with around the country because it's so different sometimes from place to place. So in Texas, you guys obviously had such an influx of people coming in.
Of course.
Everybody seemed to be moving from California
it's better in
to
Texas.
Texas.
What can I say?
Everything's bigger and better. So I would love to hear, what are you hearing from your builders and developers as far as how do they feel about the current market, some of the challenges they're experiencing, and what are their thoughts? Are they feeling optimistic? Are they feeling...
It is optimistic. I think there's a changing environment. I think we go to pre-COVID and that was one market. Then we go into COVID and things were flying off the shelf where maybe it was less about lead generation and more about relevancy and branding and just being known, as well as pre-sales. But with the recent interest hikes and inventory, it really has shifted to one in Texas. I think we're better situated than some in other places, but with the large population shift, it's very robust. But I do think when we're looking at with new developments coming online, developers and home builders are rethinking what they're going to offer. There's not as much as maybe discretionary or wanting to get all the bells and whistles, how much you can develop on a parcel of land. So you're getting creative with the amenities, the product itself, maybe smaller spaces, more vertical. And I don't think this is exclusive for residential. I also see this across in commercial as well and adaptive reuse.
Yeah. And obviously, we've seen a trend over the last few years of builders moving into built for rent space. Mm-hmm. And I know that is one of the segments that you service, and you help them develop their marketing strategy for that particular segment, because although it can seem similar to when you're selling homes to a buyer versus renting, there's going to be some similarities, obviously, but there are some distinct differences. So today's topic, we'd love to get into what are some of the differences? How do we even prepare our marketing ahead of time, right? Because there are some differences between when you start marketing community for pre-sale, right? Before the dirt's even there, versus what happens in that build to rent space. I imagine it's probably a little bit more delayed. And then, of course, I'd love to talk about marketing itself, from budgets to where do you market, how do you market, what messaging you're seeing. So why don't we start with the very beginning? So
Yes.
before you even begin to market, what kind of conversations are you having with the developers, with builders who are thinking about getting into that space?
It starts with a concept. It really starts with having an end game in mind, because to back up what a build to rent is, it is we've been doing build to rent and rental marketing for over 10 years now. But really what I've seen over the last 6 to 12 months is a huge influx in inquiries and need for build to rent. A lot of these are pushed through Wall Street, hedge funds, those that are looking to put the money to work, but are looking for a different asset class, and that being a community that's primarily of single family homes built to rent, which there are a lot of parallels to the for sale marketing, but there are differences. So when those that are looking to start developing this new product and asset class, you do have to start thinking about the end game in mind, with what is the concept, what is the story? Because if you just type in to Google homes for sale, you're typically going to find mixed neighborhoods of buyers, renters, traditional neighborhoods. You might see some on Zillow and realtor.com. You really want to get your concept, your amenities, what is the community that you're building and the story that you want to tell. And
I love that concept of creating that story ahead of time and a sense of community, because it is such an important piece of owning a home. And you may not necessarily think that a renter would want a community, but again, remember, we're talking about single family home rentals oftentimes, right? So it's going to be even different from multifamily. So, what I'd love to touch a little bit on that misconception of the demographic, like who are the people who are actually renting homes? Because a lot of people may think it's the people who can't afford to buy, it's the first time buyer. What are you seeing?
Yeah, as we're diving more into more, that's the really interesting thing that we're seeing with the audience is, at cursory glance, you're going to think, okay, first time home buyers, or those that are not there at the moment to be home buyers, young professionals, one, maybe two children, or a couple, or a professional that has an animal that needs more space. That's typically the buyer's journey that you're seeing in the rental community. Build to rent and wanting to have that sense of community and a piece of home ownership, or the benefits of being in a home, is not exclusive to that young professional demographic. We're seeing young professionals, we're seeing young couples, we're seeing empty nesters, we're seeing pre-retirees. You have these older individuals or couples who maybe their children are off to college, they're having families on their own. They would want to be moving somewhere closer, or somewhere that there's amenities or resort style amenities, but they don't want to deal with the upkeep and what comes with home ownership. And then you also have young professionals, and just the shifting of demographics and populations throughout America, and I would believe beyond. It's a large commitment to say, I want to stay somewhere fixed for 30 years. And this is that happy medium that we're seeing. And I think a lot of people are tapping into it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Again, it's not a new concept, but it's becoming very more and more in vogue, as in our experience over the last year.
Yeah, I think for sure it certainly is something that media has been talking about much more than we've heard before. And with interest rates where they are, it certainly makes sense that it's been a hot topic, but you're right, it's not necessarily a new concept. It's just, it seems to be getting a lot of publicity recently. But that is interesting to think about, that demographic, because it is almost more similar to the buyer of single family home as opposed to a typical multifamily who's going to be living in a multifamily. Although even both multifamilies where I live, we have kind of one area where it blew up with shops and restaurants, and they kind of made it an outdoor village, and they built all multifamilies. And it's a ton of 55 plus folks who are moving there. So again, I think it is changing. And the way Americans live their lives certainly has changed post-COVID. And I think we're seeing that now. That is interesting when you're crafting your story and you're thinking about what kind of message, what kind of feeling, what kind of sense of community, all those things are so important to consider. So don't forget your demographics, because chances are you got to do great research to find out who is going to be that ideal buyer for you, so you can make sure to get that story correctly.
Yeah. And it's great to see some of these properties and fully built out BTR developments where you have just a swath of cross-generational residents there, which is always amazing to see, that there's that sense of community, not based on some sort of niche or time period in an individual's lives, but that there's this larger sense of community. And like you said, it's around everything being a lot more centralized. Again, you look to the commercial real estate, or even as you see in multifamily, this concept of live, work, play, where you're really seeing maybe the bottom being retail shops, then probably office spaces on the first and second floor, and then multifamily on the rest of the floors above, and everything being centralized and convenience.
For sure. So you think that millennials and now probably Gen Zs too have more in common with baby boomers than we previously thought.
It's wild seeing coffee shops and exchanging ideas, which I think is wonderful.
Yeah. So when you're positioning your marketing, it is almost not around the age, the stage of life necessarily, but more of the interest, that lifestyle, right? That's what's more important.
It is. And again, it gets back to the original. What is the end game? What is the concept? Doing that market research, knowing the reach. And I'll give an example of one that we're doing out in Horseshoe Bay. If you're familiar with the Central Texas area, it's a very resort, older demographic. And then we're building or helping develop and the branding and marketing for a mixed development. So there's going to be some commercial, there's going to be hospitality, there's going to be residential, there's a farm dominium side to it. But there's also a long-term living center, and behind there are cottages, which would fall under the build-to-rent category. So in that case, there is a need to brand to a certain audience, that one being pre-retirees and retirees that are making their way in the golden years of their lives. It really gets back to, it's a wonderful asset class that it's almost like the Wild West. It has endless possibilities, but it really requires, at the very start of the inception, bringing the main parties together and having that end game in mind, and then working backwards and building the story, having your brand and style guides aligned to that, from everything from the type, from the colors, the emotions it evokes, the amenities, making sure that what's there, the whisper campaigns, the pre-sales, everything has continuity. So again, there's a lot of parallels between the for sale marketing and the build to rent marketing, rental, and then what you'll see in probably commercial and multifamily.
Yeah, so actually, before we jump into some of the marketing nuances, let's talk about amenities, because again, amenities is a huge lever that's going to help you pull the type of buyer you're trying to attract. And probably depending what kind of amenities you're going to choose, it can also significantly change the amount of money that you're able to charge per month. It
is. The top amenities across the board, whether it's for sale, BTR, rental, is going to be walking trails, lifestyle, a lot of being health conscious. Again, that's not exclusive to a certain age demographic. We're seeing that health conscious from Gen Zers to baby boomers and beyond. So amenities that cater to that. Community centers, areas where people can congregate, share ideas. One concept that we see is an open pavilion or clubhouse where they can bring in music events and hold classes. And again, develop those amenities are there to also fulfill that sense of community in a place of shared spaces. Then you followed by pools. Being in Texas, it does help to have some water and to feel cool,
Yeah.
especially
What's the
102
temperature
degrees.
like today where you are?
Today it is 99, which is a
Oh.
vacation from 106 of last week.
Oh,
So
my goodness. We have a heat wave in Pennsylvania right now.
I heard 90 degrees. I was
It
talking to
is.
somebody this
It's
morning.
like 90 degrees, but I'm telling you, it doesn't feel like 90 degrees. It feels much worse. If we're on the Northeast, like the heat, the humidity gets trapped, and it's just you can't even breathe when you go outside. But yeah, I'm sure. I guess we're spoiled compared to the rest of the country.
No,
Still having some normalcy in
just
our
getting used
summers.
to it. And
But
you
it's
get to enjoy the hiking trails and the rivers, and the water
right.
more back to amenities and accessibility.
Yeah, and it's probably why you mentioned a little bit in the beginning about the size of the homes, etc. But there's been that shift to smaller home, but maybe bigger amenities, right? So that people are coming together. They don't necessarily have to take care of that lawn individually, but
Yeah.
they have a green space where they can all conjugate and not necessarily worry about taking care of that lawn. Somebody else is taking care of that. So
Yeah, and we're seeing this too. And again, it's not specific to age. You're seeing empty nesters, pre-retirees that are saying, I just want to downsize and simplify my life. And then you also have Gen Z millennials saying, hey, we're going to probably delay on home buying. Hey, we're going to probably delay on having kids. I have maybe a dog, and that doesn't require such a huge space.
So let's transition into marketing. So obviously marketing, again, single family home to sell versus rent, although there's going to be some overlap, there's going to be some differences. So starting with the budget, what are we talking about budget differences here? And how do we think about
budget differences? We took a good rule of thumb in the for sale or master plan communities, as well as builders, is take 1% of your annualized revenue and dedicate that to the marketing. Whereas build to rent, rental, that spread is going to be 1 to 3%.
Wait, build to rent 1 to 3 or build to
sell? Rent being 1 to 3.
Oh, okay.
For sale would be around 1%. Again, the reason why you have such a 1 to 3 spread on build to rent is it's around the leasing up period and what's called leasing velocity, is how long is something on the market, and then finding occupants. Because once you've built out the community, you've sold the product on a for sale, you've done the job. Whereas you have to, for the build to rent and rental marketing, you really have to be in tune with the property management group, the developers, the investors, the internal stakeholders, of knowing, okay, how much units are coming online, what's going to be the phased approach, what's the leasing period, seasonality. Similar to for sale, you're going to see movement starting in early spring. Young families looking to then make their large moves and shifts going to be during the summertime while children are out. But you also have to take in regional differences. If you go up to maybe Chicago or Minnesota, up in there, maybe even Pennsylvania. I've spent some time up there. I don't know how you guys feel about moving in the dead of winter.
Not great.
Yeah.
Although global warming is coming here too. When we settled on our house a few years ago, it was middle of December, and it was 75 degrees.
Oh, we'll see. So. There you go. And as trends, they change, but typically we see the traditional patterns, but those are what we have to really strategize around too. There's multiple factors.
That's interesting. So it's actually more to market the for rent community, which makes sense. So I'm curious about the differences between expectations of the consumers for sale versus for rent. Do you feel that the appetite of built for rent people on technology and that expectation, because I think in multifamily, you almost expect that the process of selecting the place, the type of visualization they're going to offer, maybe a lot of the processes like make an initial deposit or application all done online, versus for sale, we're still trying to get people on board with it. But I think, again, more and more people are expecting that. It's just a matter of maybe not as many builders are offering that as opposed to a multifamily. So what do you see in built to rent for single family? Is that more widely adopted, or is it about the same?
I think it's hard to judge right now to do an apples to apples comparison, because we as consumers in the West have been conditioned that home buying is at the forefront. So there's nothing that's going to compare to being a home owner. The appetite for build to rent is showing strong. You can use rental and multifamily as an indicator, as well as the rental home market as well. I believe that as more and more build to rent communities are coming up, we're in an educational phase in the marketplace where, like you said, you listen to news outlets, CNN, the Financial Times, and so forth, they're talking more and more about build to rent. So there is an educational period, which for us is a giant opportunity, because not only have we worked with this type of product and asset class, but we get to define it too. And I think you're going to see more and more people widely adopt this idea, just as renting has become more and more widely adopted over the last half century, quarter century. Build to rent and single family homes to rent in a designated community, not in a mixed community, I think is going to become very widely popular.
Okay, I guess what I was trying to ask you is the expectations of the consumers on the technology side.
About the technology within the home, or
so more the buying technology, okay. Right? So yes. A lot of our more progressive builders are offering a lot of digital visualization tools. Like, you can design your house from the exterior, you can design the house from the interior, you can have an interactive floor plan and interactive site
I completely agree. Yeah, that's your website is the top end of the funnel. Nothing is going to replace website. That's going to be your first impression, the interactiveness for build to rent. In comparison to for sale, like we see with some of our clients, like we create these websites that you're able to customize and you're able to do your pricing before you even talk to a sales agent, which is extremely great data to understand what floor plans are really working, what amenities are really working, and really the developer, the sales and marketing team, the home builder, they're really making data-driven decisions from that. Where you go to maybe the rental and build to rent, those technologies to help make decisions are still crucial and vital. Having a website presence, having renderings, having floor plans. There's less customization because you're already saying, here's the product. However, we're finding that the developers are putting all the bells and whistles in the house. So yes, the renter of the build to rent and multifamily is losing a little bit on customization. However, I think they're gaining a lot on amenities, and with the fact that the developer is saying this is going to be a product that we want to withstand the ages, so we want to make it the best as possible.
And I think also it's important to realize that although they may not be able to customize, again, for people, the biggest thing is, can I visualize it? And if I'm not going to come into your office, which I'm probably not going to come in until I'm pretty freaking sure that I want to live there. And if you're not showing me what it looks like from inside, outside, 360, like all the angles, I'm probably not going to make it, right? Like it's going to be difficult if I'm just seeing black and white floor plan that I can't really do anything with. I can't conceptualize the space. So I would be curious to see if the build to rent have a greater expectation, the consumer have a greater expectation for that type of technology, as opposed to somebody just selling homes, not just selling homes, but selling homes, because that segment of the market, again, from multifamily, you do hear more of the automated processes, apply online and all those things.
And those are all there too. I would even argue that the rental community has been on the forefront of resident portals, leasing agreements, doing everything digital before they even make it to the site.
I agree.
And the interactive experience, looking over the different floor plans, 360 tours, photos, visual assets, reports, things of this nature. I think it's a big mistake if people underestimate how educated the market is and how much information is out there and what we have now conditioned the buyer's experience to be. That you go onto a site and it takes 15 seconds, 20 seconds to load. That's 15, 20 seconds for them to get out of there. Yeah. Right. So a responsive, a user experience, that's what you want. Getting back to the brand and concept and all these tools, you want that continuity across all divisions and all marketing channels. And having a robust website, working with Inugo and the renderings, like that is paramount to the user experience. I would say people are amiss if they don't have that in the buyer's journey, where they are creating so much research spreadsheets, that there's so much information out there that they're going to look for that trust factor before they even step foot on the property. And that's not exclusive to any rental. That's just real estate in general.
I agree with you. So even though maybe it's not customization, but it's just ability to see it, like we want to see it to believe it. And again, you said they're putting all the bells and whistles. So think about creative ways to even show off some of those bells and whistles. Like one of the things I'd love to see is, instead of just your old regular 360 virtual tour, make it again interactive, but also include features that are outside the box, like maybe some of the smart home technology, right? Do you have a smart refrigerator or oven? Tell me how it's going to make my life easier. Tell me how living in this community is going to make me feel secure because it has the Ring doorbell and whatever, the finger scan, like
the finger scan, the property. One we're seeing that's becoming very almost a necessity in future developments is outfitting Wi-Fi and high-speed internet across the whole property. So you can sit at a park bench, you can sit at the community center. There's little common areas that you can then sit on, and you're already tapped into a network, because you do have that work from home and accessibility and technology. All, they all want it there.
Absolutely. So one last thing I do want to ask you about marketing for build to rent and some of the differences as opposed to the selling side is, how soon do we start the marketing, specifically SEM, right? Like, when do we figure out what keywords we want to target? When do we start that campaign? And how far in advance of the date that I can actually rent somebody or move somebody in?
That's a very great question. You start with the concept and branding, and as soon as you can get that knocked out, and then it really gets down to the units and when they're going to be available. Typically, you'll see probably a 90-day, 45 to 90 day for rental periods. You really want to take that maybe a quarter, 2 to 3 months prior to that to really start engaging the individual to start knowing about the property, getting in that research phase, and then interacting with them immediately. Getting back to websites and responsiveness, if they put in an inquiry, you want to be there as soon as possible to answer the call, answer questions, and help with that first experience. Long-winded branding, storytelling, that's at the start. That involves all stakeholders, everybody being aligned and saying, this is what we're shooting for as a team. And then as you start getting into the construction phase and planning, that's when you want to start building out maybe some whisper campaigns, some pre-sales, some reservation lists, something that can already, you're not just this concept of, if you build it, they will come. Hey, I built a product, I'm going to put a sign up and my door is going to flood wide open.
Although someday in COVID, it apparently happened. But so I love that. So don't ignore the pre-sale opportunity, right? And that's again, going back to the tools that you can use. What are you going to show them? Are you going to show them pre-sale of something on paper, the blueprints that the future thing's going to be? Or are you going to show them some amazing graphics where they can say, oh, I can see this, even though it's
renderings? Yeah, because, it's really hard to bring somebody on raw piece of dirt and have them imagine. 70% of us are visual learners or some degree of that. So being able to fulfill that story and that kind of, okay, I can picture myself here. That's what we have to do as marketers in conjunction with the construction and design team.
Yes, absolutely. Aaron, thank you so much for being a guest today. As we wrap things up, is there anything that we didn't talk about today, I didn't ask you, that you think is very important for our listeners to know?
No, I appreciate getting to share some thoughts, and I'm excited for what's to come in 2024. I think we're entering a new consumer and buyer behavior post-COVID.
If somebody wants to connect with Smart Touch Interactive, they want to find out more about what is it that you do, how to work with you, is there a best place to go? Do you personally hang out online somewhere? If somebody wants to follow you, where do we go?
I do. You can find, if you go to our LinkedIn or Facebook or any of our social handles, you can see some of our great teams. And then I highly recommend, if anyone's interested in learning more, we have great resources and specialists at hand. The people I get to work with are amazing. And if you just go to our website, browse around, see what we're made of, and just start a conversation. If you just want to pick our brains, we're a resource, and that's what we're here to do.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for being a guest on today's podcast. I appreciate all the knowledge you shared with us. I think it's such an interesting and important topic. So if you guys are building or considering build for rent, don't assume that your marketing is going to mirror what you've been doing. So definitely get in touch with Smart Touch Interactive, and they're going to set you up on the right path. Make sure you work with a pro before you even break the ground, before you finalize the concept, so that they can make sure that you have a home run of a product at the very end. So, Aaron, thanks for being on today, and talk to you very next time.
Thank you.